Part 1. The danger nobody warns you about. Nobody plans to become average, yet most people do. Not because they are weak, not because they are incapable, but because average is comfortable, and comfort is far more dangerous than people realize. Take a moment and imagine yourself 10 years from now, not tomorrow, not next month, 10 years from today. Now ask yourself something honestly. Are you moving toward the life you want? Or are you simply drifting? Because one of the greatest dangers in life is not failure, it is drift. And drift is how average lives are created. Now let's begin. When people imagine failure, they often picture something dramatic, a collapse, a disaster, a major mistake, something obvious. But average rarely arrives that way. Average arrives quietly, one decision at a time, one excuse at a time, one comfortable choice at a time. And because the process is so gradual, most people never notice it happening. This is what makes it dangerous. Now imagine a person waking up one morning. He chooses comfort over discipline. Nothing happens. The world does not end. His life does not collapse. The choice feels harmless. The next day, he makes the same choice again. Nothing dramatic happens. Then another day, then another, then another. Years pass, and eventually, he arrives somewhere he never intended to be. Not because of one catastrophic decision, because of thousands of small ones. This is how average is built. Now here's something important. Nobody wakes up one day and decides, I want to live an average life. Nobody dreams of unrealized potential. Nobody dreams of regret. Nobody dreams of looking back and wondering what could have been. But average is not created by intention. It is created by neglect. The neglect of discipline. The neglect of growth. The neglect of action. Now imagine another person. She understands something powerful. Small choices matter, not because of what they do today, but because of what they become tomorrow. So she pays attention, not perfectly, but intentionally. She understands that the future is built from repeated decisions. And because of that awareness, her life begins moving in a different direction. This is one of the biggest invisible differences in life. Most people focus on major decisions. Successful people focus on daily decisions. Now let's go deeper. Average often disguises itself as reasonableness. This is why it becomes so difficult to recognize. It sounds logical, comfortable, safe. It says, skip today. 1 more hour won't matter. Start next week. Everyone else is doing the same thing. And because those statements sound harmless, people accept them again and again until years disappear. Now imagine a person standing at a crossroads. One path requires effort, discipline, patience, discomfort. The other path feels easier, more relaxing, more enjoyable in the moment. Most people choose the easier path, not because they are incapable of more, because immediate comfort feels rewarding. This is human nature, and that is exactly why average is so common. Now here's something deeper. The greatest threat to your future is often not pain. It is pleasure. Think about that. Pain usually gets attention. People notice problems. People notice failure. People notice suffering. But pleasure can quietly distract people for years. Endless entertainment, endless scrolling, endless consumption, endless distraction. And because it feels good, people rarely question it until the consequences arrive. Now imagine another person. She enjoys life, but she also protects her future. She understands that pleasure is wonderful when it serves life, but dangerous when it replaces growth. This awareness changes everything because she begins controlling comfort instead of being controlled by it. Now let's go deeper. Many people underestimate the power of accumulation. Small actions seem insignificant. Small mistakes seem insignificant. Small improvements seem insignificant. But accumulation changes everything. Now imagine two people. The difference between them today is almost invisible. One reads 10 pages each day. The other does not. One exercises briefly each day. The other does not. One saves a little money. The other spends everything. After 1 week, there is almost no difference. After 1 month, still very little difference. But after 10 years, the difference becomes enormous. This is critical because average is not a destination. It is a process created through repeated choices. Now here's something important. The world often celebrates extraordinary results, but extraordinary results usually come from ordinary habits, repeated consistently. This is why many people misunderstand success. They focus on outcomes, not behaviors, achievements, not routines, results, not systems. And because of that, they miss the real cause of transformation. Now imagine a builder constructing a skyscraper. No single brick creates the building. No single day creates the result. The structure emerges through repetition. The same principle applies to life. Your future is being built right now, through habits, through standards, through choices, whether you notice it or not. Now let's go deeper. One of the saddest realities in life is unrealized potential. Not because people lack ability, but because many people never fully use it. They stay comfortable, stay distracted, stay busy, stay average. And years later, they look back wondering, what if I had started sooner? What if I had been more disciplined? What if I had believed in myself? These questions are painful because they cannot change the past. Now imagine another person. She asks those questions today, not 10 years later, today. And because she acts now, she changes the direction of her future. This is powerful because awareness creates opportunity. Now here's something even deeper. Average is attractive because it asks very little of you. No risk, no sacrifice, no discomfort, no extraordinary effort. But there is a hidden cost, and that cost appears later, in the form of regret, because comfort today often becomes disappointment tomorrow. Now imagine reaching the end of your life, looking back, not at what you attempted, but at what you avoided, the opportunities ignored, the potential wasted, the dreams postponed. For many people, that becomes the heaviest burden of all. Not failure, regret. Another powerful example is Jim Rohn. He often spoke about the power of daily disciplines, the idea that success and failure are both created gradually, one decision at a time, one habit at a time. This lesson remains timeless because life rarely changes dramatically overnight. It changes through accumulation. Now think about your own life. Where have you been drifting? Where have you been choosing comfort repeatedly? What future are your current habits creating? These questions matter deeply because average is not something that suddenly happens. It is something that quietly grows. day after day, choice after choice. Now let's step back for a moment. This message is not about perfection. It is not about becoming obsessed with achievement. It is about awareness. The awareness that your daily choices matter far more than you think. In the next part, we will go even deeper. We will explore why average becomes addictive, why people settle for less than they are capable of, and why comfort may be the most expensive habit a person can develop. Because in the end, the greatest tragedy is not failure. It is becoming average, without ever realizing it. Part 2. Why average becomes addictive. Average is not a lack of ability. It is often a series of comfortable decisions. And the most dangerous part is this average feels good in the beginning. The price is simply paid later. Take a moment and think about something honestly. Why do so many people settle for less than they are capable of? Why do so many dreams disappear? Why do so many people stop growing? The answer is rarely a lack of intelligence, rarely a lack of talent, rarely a lack of opportunity. More often, it is comfort. And comfort is powerful, because comfort does not feel like a threat. It feels like a reward. Now let's begin. Imagine a person standing at a crossroads. One path requires effort. The other requires almost nothing. One path demands discipline. The other offers comfort. The difficult path feels uncomfortable immediately. The comfortable path feels rewarding immediately. And because human beings naturally seek pleasure, most people choose comfort, not once, repeatedly. This is where the problem begins. Now imagine that same person making small, comfortable choices every day. Sleep a little longer. Delay important work. Avoid difficult conversations. Postpone personal growth. Nothing catastrophic happens. In fact, life still feels fine. This is what makes average so dangerous. The consequences are delayed. Now imagine another person. She chooses a slightly harder path, not because she enjoys suffering, but because she understands something important. Short-term discomfort often creates long-term freedom. This awareness changes her behavior, and eventually, it changes her life. Now here's something deeper. Average becomes addictive because it protects people from immediate pain. Think about that. Growth is uncomfortable. Learning is uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. Responsibility is uncomfortable. And because discomfort feels unpleasant, many people instinctively avoid it. The problem is, the things people avoid today often become the problems they face tomorrow. Now imagine avoiding exercise for years. At first, nothing seems wrong. Then energy begins declining. Health begins declining. Confidence begins declining. The cost appears later. Now imagine avoiding difficult financial decisions. Again, nothing dramatic happens immediately. But over time, stress accumulates. Problems accumulate. Consequences accumulate. This pattern appears everywhere. Because delayed consequences are easy to ignore. Now let's go deeper. One of the biggest reasons people remain average is because average is socially accepted. In many situations, nobody criticizes average. Nobody challenges average. Nobody questions average. Now imagine someone spending every evening watching television for hours, scrolling endlessly, avoiding meaningful goals. Most people will not confront them because many people are doing the same thing. This creates a dangerous illusion. If everyone around you is drifting, drifting begins to feel normal. But normal and beneficial are not always the same thing. This is critical because people often mistake common behavior for wise behavior. Now imagine another person. She notices what everyone else is doing, but she asks a different question. Where does this path lead? That question separates builders from drifters. Because successful people often evaluate consequences, not just comfort. Now here's something important. The average life is rarely destroyed by one major mistake. It is usually weakened by thousands of small compromises. One skipped workout, one delayed project, one broken promise, one unnecessary distraction, one excuse, then another, and eventually, those small compromises become identity. Now imagine two people again. The difference between them today appears tiny. One keeps promises to himself. The other frequently breaks them. After one day, the difference is invisible. After 1 year, the difference becomes noticeable. After 10 years, the difference becomes dramatic. This is why small actions matter so much, because habits eventually become character. Now let's go deeper. Many people believe extraordinary lives require extraordinary effort, but often, extraordinary lives are created through ordinary discipline, repeated consistently. Now imagine a person reading 10 pages a day. The habit seems insignificant, almost laughable. But after 10 years, that person has consumed thousands of pages of knowledge. Now imagine another person. 10 pages never seemed important enough to start, and 10 years later, nothing has changed. This is one of the greatest misunderstandings in life. People overestimate dramatic action and underestimate consistency. Now here's something deeper. Comfort creates a dangerous illusion of safety. People often believe, if I avoid risk, I will avoid pain. But life does not work that way. Avoiding growth creates its own pain. Avoiding responsibility creates its own pain. Avoiding challenges creates its own pain. The difference is timing. The pain of discipline appears first. The pain of regret appears later. Now imagine a person choosing comfort for 20 years. Everything feels easy, predictable, safe. Then one day, he looks around and realizes nothing meaningful has changed. This realization can be devastating because time is one thing that cannot be recovered. Now imagine another person. She accepts discomfort early. The effort, the discipline, the sacrifice, and years later, she experiences the reward. This is another invisible difference. Some people pay first and enjoy later. Others enjoy first and pay later. Now let's go deeper. One of the saddest moments in life is realizing you are capable of more. Not because someone tells you, because you know it yourself. You know you could have tried harder. You know you could have been braver. You know you could have acted sooner. And that realization often hurts more than failure, because failure at least requires an attempt. Regret often comes from never trying. Now imagine standing at the end of your life, looking back. Which would hurt more, the memory of mistakes or the memory of opportunities you never pursued? For most people, the answer becomes obvious, because unrealized potential creates a unique kind of pain. Now here's something important. You do not become extraordinary overnight. Nobody does. Extraordinary lives are usually built through ordinary decisions, repeated consistently, day after day, year after year. This is good news, because it means transformation is accessible. It does not require perfection. It requires direction. Now let's imagine another example. A person decides to improve by just 1% every day. The improvement seems meaningless, invisible, almost ridiculous. But years later, the results become extraordinary because growth compounds. Just like neglect compounds, this principle never stops working, whether people notice it or not. Another powerful example is James Clear. His work often emphasizes how small habits create remarkable results over time. The idea that tiny improvements, repeated consistently, can completely transform a person's future. This lesson matters deeply because average and extraordinary are often separated by daily behavior, not dramatic moments. Now think about your own life. Where has comfort become a habit? What compromises have become normal? What future are your current choices creating? These questions matter deeply because average rarely announces itself. It grows quietly, hidden beneath comfort, hidden beneath routine, hidden beneath delay. In the final part, we will go even deeper. We will explore why the price of average becomes visible too late, why regret is often more painful than failure, and why a few disciplined choices today can completely change the next 10 years of your life. Because in the end, average is not a destination. It is a direction. And every day, you are choosing one. Part 3. The price is paid later. Average feels harmless today. That is why it is so dangerous. Because the cost does not arrive immediately. The bill comes years later. Take a moment and imagine two people. Both are standing in exactly the same place today. The same age, the same opportunities, the same potential, the same 24 hours. If you looked at them now, you might see almost no difference. But fast forward 10 years, one life looks completely different from the other. Why? Because time magnifies small decisions. And this is something most people fail to understand. Life is not changed only by major decisions. Life is often changed by repeated daily choices. Tiny choices. Invisible choices. Choices nobody notices until the results become impossible to ignore. Now let's begin. One of the greatest illusions in life is believing that today's decisions only affect today. They do not. Every choice sends a message to your future. Every habit writes part of your story. Every action moves you somewhere, whether you notice it or not. Now imagine a person choosing comfort repeatedly, not because he is lazy, not because he lacks intelligence, simply because comfort feels easier. The easier meal, the easier decision, the easier path, the easier excuse. Nothing dramatic happens. In fact, life feels pleasant. This is why average becomes so dangerous. The consequences are invisible in the beginning. Now imagine another person. She chooses a slightly harder path. Not every time, not perfectly, but consistently. She keeps small promises, faces small discomforts, accepts small sacrifices. Again, nothing dramatic happens, at least not immediately. But 10 years later, the difference becomes extraordinary. Because discipline compounds, just like neglect compounds. Now here's something important. The price of average is often hidden until it is too late. Most people do not wake up at 30 and regret wasting one day. They regret wasting years. They regret the accumulation, the missed opportunities, the postponed goals, the abandoned dreams, the habits that quietly stole their future. This is critical because regret rarely comes from one decision. It usually comes from a pattern. Now imagine a person reaching middle age. He looks around and suddenly realizes he has spent years waiting, waiting for motivation, waiting for confidence, waiting for the right time, waiting for life to change. And then a painful realization appears. Life was waiting for him too. This moment can be devastating because time is the one resource that never returns. Now imagine another person. She understands this early. She understands that the future is not built someday. It is built today. So she begins acting now, not because she feels ready, because she understands that readiness often follows action. This awareness changes everything. Now let's go deeper. One of the saddest forms of suffering is unrealized potential, not failure. Potential, because failure means you tried. Failure means you entered the arena. Failure means you risked something. But unrealized potential is different. It is the pain of wondering, the pain of uncertainty, the pain of never knowing. Now imagine standing at the end of your life. Looking back, would you rather remember your failures or the dreams you never pursued, the opportunities you never explored, the person you never became? For many people, that question creates immediate discomfort because deep inside, they already know the answer. Now here's something deeper. Failure often teaches. Regret often haunts. Failure provides lessons. Regret provides questions. And unanswered questions can follow people for decades. Questions like, what if I had started? What if I had been more disciplined? What if I had believed in myself? What if I had stopped making excuses? These questions carry weight because they point toward lives that never happened. Now imagine another person. She asks those questions today, before it is too late, before decades disappear. And because she asks them early, she changes her direction. This is powerful because awareness creates possibility. Now let's go deeper. Many people spend years trying to avoid discomfort, but eventually, they discover something surprising. Discomfort is temporary. Regret is not. The pain of waking up early eventually disappears. The pain of exercise eventually disappears. The pain of discipline eventually disappears. But the pain of wasted potential can remain for years. This is one of the most important lessons in life. Short-term discomfort often creates long-term freedom. Short-term comfort often creates long-term regret. Now imagine climbing a mountain. The climb is difficult. The effort is real. The struggle is real. But eventually, you reach the view. Now imagine staying at the bottom. Safe, comfortable, protected. Years later, the mountain remains unconquered. The view remains unseen. The possibility remains unexplored. This is exactly how many people live. Not because they are incapable, because they choose comfort repeatedly. Now here's something important. The extraordinary life is usually not built through extraordinary moments. It is built through ordinary standards, ordinary discipline, ordinary consistency, repeated for years. This should be encouraging, because greatness is often less dramatic than people imagine. It is usually a collection of small decisions made correctly, again and again and again. Now let's go deeper. Every day, you are becoming someone, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Your habits are shaping you. Your standards are shaping you. Your routines are shaping you. The question is not whether change is happening, The question is, in what direction? Because average is a direction. Excellence is a direction. Growth is a direction. And every choice moves you toward one of them. Now imagine yourself 10 years from today. Which version of yourself would make you proud? The version that chose comfort repeatedly? Or the version that chose growth repeatedly? That question matters. Because your future self is being built right now, at this very moment, through today's decisions. Now here's something even deeper. The world rarely announces opportunity. Opportunity often arrives disguised as effort, responsibility, discipline, consistency. And because those things seem ordinary, many people overlook them. But successful people understand something different. Extraordinary futures are usually hidden inside ordinary daily actions. This is why builders eventually surpass dreamers. This is why disciplined people eventually surpass talented people. This is why consistent people eventually surpass motivated people. Because consistency survives when emotions disappear. Another powerful example is Warren Buffett. He often speaks about compounding. Most people think of compounding financially, but the principle applies to life itself. Habits compound, knowledge compounds, discipline compounds, and over decades, small advantages become enormous advantages. Now think about your own life. What habits are compounding right now? What future are your daily decisions creating? What would happen if you continued living exactly as you are today? For the next 10 years, these questions matter deeply. Because average is never created in a single day. And excellence is never created in a single day either. Both are built gradually. Now let's step back for a moment. This message is not about fear. It is about awareness. The awareness that your future is not decided by luck alone, not by talent alone, not by circumstances alone, but by the choices you repeat, day after day, year after year. Now here's the final truth. The cost of being average is rarely paid today. That is why so many people ignore it. The cost is paid later, in regret, in missed opportunities, in unrealized potential, in the painful realization that you were capable of more. Before we finish, ask yourself honestly, what direction are your current habits taking you? And if you continued exactly as you are today, would you be proud of where you arrive? Because the future you want is not built someday. It is built one choice at a time. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Keep growing. Keep choosing intentionally. Keep building your future. And see you in the next story.